Hello everyone, and welcome to Hallow World. This is a horror narration channel where all the stories are written and narrated by a human. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. It'll really help the channel. Today's story is called Cowboy Casino. Please enjoy. Jeff rubbed his temples with his fingers, eyes closed in exhaustion. He sat at his desk in the tiny living room of the single-wide trailer he had bought 3 years ago. On the desk before him lay a crumpled stack of job ads, applications, and newspapers. It was September of 1987, and Jeff hadn't worked in almost 6 weeks. He was getting desperate, his savings all but dried up. He leaned back in his ancient desk chair and sighed, the cracked green leather groaning and crackling in protest. He looked over at a framed photo of an elderly woman set on the back left corner of his desk. "I'm sorry, Mom," Jeff lamented. "I really thought I'd make it farther in this world." He opened his desk drawer slowly, revealing the loaded revolver inside. As he stared at the gun, a loose sheet of paper suddenly shifted and fell gracefully to the floor by his feet. He started and looked over at the fallen paper. "Help wanted. Start immediately. $20 an hour." The large, bold writing stared back up at him. He blinked in confusion. Where the heck did that come from? He wondered aloud. He reached down and picked up the wrinkled paper. At the bottom, in a smaller font, it listed a phone number and an address under the name Cowboy Casino. Casino, he muttered, still utterly baffled at where this ad had come from. He reached for the old beige rotary phone sitting opposite the framed photo of his mother and dialed the number from the ad. The phone rang twice and was promptly answered. "Cowboy Casino, this is Todd. How can I help you?" Yeah, hi, my name's Jeff. I was calling about the Help Wanted ad." There was a long pause, and Jeff started to wonder if there was a problem with the connection. Suddenly, Todd responded. "Oh, yes, of course. When can you come in for an interview?" Jeff looked at the clock hanging on the wall near his desk. 5:18 p.m. Would tomorrow morning work for you?" he asked. Sure, Todd replied nonchalantly. "I'll see you in the morning then, 8 a.m.? "I'll be there," Jeff said, beaming with joy and relief. That night, Jeff lay in bed pondering the day's events. How had he gotten that ad without seeing it? That $20 an hour was pretty large and bold. He couldn't believe he had missed it. That was more money than he could ever hope for. His last job was stocking materials in a warehouse, and it paid $10 an hour. To double that working at a casino would be wild. But what kind of work would he do? He figured he knew how to play poker and blackjack, so he could probably deal those tables. He drifted off, thinking over the rules to poker and what it would be like dealing in a casino. Jeff pulled up to the large rectangular building with a neon sign reading Cowboy Casino and looked at the clock on his car's dashboard. 7:48 a.m. Jeff clicked his tongue. He had meant to be walking in at 7:45, but morning traffic had been worse than he anticipated. He grabbed the ad and his resume from the passenger seat of his 1965 Buick LeSabre and stepped out onto the pavement. He walked up to the front doors and realized the building looked rather old and run down, nothing like the fancy casino he had imagined. He walked in the dimly lit foyer and glanced around. There was a row of windows across the front of the building, but not much light made it through the layer of grime that covered them. The interior was lit with 4 rows of old fluorescents, some of which flickered pitifully. On one side of the large rectangular room were several rows of slot machines, mostly old mechanicals, but Jeff saw a few newer electronic machines as well. It seems like every machine had an ancient-looking old person sitting in front of it. Jeff smiled, amused by the sight. Then he heard the click of boot heels on tile, and turned to see a portly older man hurrying his way. The man wore faded blue jeans with an old casual button-up, complete with cowboy boots and a black cowboy hat. I guess he's the cowboy of Cowboy Casino, Jeff thought. The older man stuck out his hand as he approached, and Jeff grasped it firmly. "Morning, young man. You must be Jeff," the older fellow wheezed, clearly out of breath. "I'm Todd. We spoke on the phone last night." Yes, sir. Nice to meet you, sir," Jeff replied as they shook hands. "Well, it's nice to meet you too, Jeff," Todd said, and he waved an arm in the direction he had come from. "Let's go to my office. We'll sit and talk." Jeff nodded and followed the shorter, older man towards the back of the old casino. He looked to the right as he walked and saw several different groups of tables for games like poker and blackjack. He wondered when was the last time anyone used them. As they entered the back area of the building, he saw a small room with a desk and security monitors to the right, and an office to the left. Between the two was a restroom, what looked like a utility closet of some sort. Todd walked into the office on the left and motioned for Jeff to take a seat. "So," Todd said as they sat down, "you saw the help wanted ad." He looked at Jeff with raised eyebrows. "Yes, sir," Jeff replied. Todd sighed and leaned forward on his elbows. "Have you ever worked in a casino?" No, sir, but the ad did say no experience required," Jeff stammered. That's true. I was just curious is all. It's actually a security gig anyways. You ever worked security?" No, sir. I've mostly worked construction and some warehouse jobs." Jeff looked over at the security room across from the office. Sitting in a cozy room watching cameras sounded like a pretty sweet gig. Todd sighed again. "Well, the shift is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Can you handle that?" "Absolutely," Jeff replied. "And I can work weekends and holidays too." At that, Todd chuckled. "Well, that's good. I think you'll be a good fit." Todd groaned as he stood and held out a hand. "You're hired," he said with a grin. Jeff took Todd's hand and shook it enthusiastically. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Jeff beamed. He hadn't expected such a short interview, certainly not to be hired on the spot. This was turning into a great day. Todd turned to leave the office and waved a hand over his shoulder. "Come with me. Let's get you set up." Jeff followed him out of the small office and across the hall to the security room. The room held a beat-up old desk, a worn and faded cloth rolling chair, a small dented file cabinet, and a monitor bank with 6 small security monitors, each showing a grainy black and white image. Todd motioned to the monitors. "Your job will mostly be sitting here watching those screens," he said. "Of course, it'll be your responsibility to make sure all the doors are locked and walk the building at least once an hour. Make sure nothing's wrong that you can't see on the camera." Todd reached over and opened the filing cabinet, pulling out a flashlight, a set of keys, and a security t-shirt. "You're like a medium, huh, Jeff?" Todd said, handing the items to Jeff. "Yes, sir, that'll fit fine," Jeff replied. "So, when do I start?" "You could start tonight if you want," Todd said. "We just gotta get your paperwork done." With that, he turned and walked out of the office towards the main casino room. "You got slots on this side." He gestured towards the slot machines as he walked. "And tables on this side." He turned left and headed to the side of the building. "You got the main entrance in the front, and you got a side door on either side. Just check now and then, make sure they're still locked, no broken glass, anything like that. Oh, and you got the back door to the kitchen back here." He walked up to a bar set in the wall on the table side of the casino. There was an employees only door right beside the bar, which he opened and walked through, leading Jeff back past the bar and through a small kitchen. Todd stopped and rapped his knuckles against the door. "As long as this is shut, it's locked, so we're good here. And here," Todd continued, "is the employee break room." He gestured towards a small, dingy room off to the side of the kitchen, with one small round table and 3 chairs around it. There was a beat-up old fridge in the corner and a coffee maker on the stained counter next to the sink. "Coffee and filters and all that are in the cabinets. I keep us stocked up," Todd said. With that, he turned and led Jeff out of the kitchen, past the bar and back onto the casino floor. From there, he turned left to the side of the building where there was another entrance. He walked up to the single glass door and tugged to demonstrate that it was locked. Then he turned and led Jeff back through the tables towards the main entrance. "The only other thing you gotta worry about," Todd said, "is this cashier's booth by the front door." He led Jeff to a small room set into the wall on the side of the little foyer that Jeff hadn't noticed before. It had a small window for exchanging money and casino chips. Todd pulled on the door to demonstrate that it was also locked. "This should never be unlocked at night," Todd said. "If you ever find this open, lock it and call me right away." Jeff nodded tersely. "All right," Todd said, then grabbed a stack of papers off the cashier booth counter and held them out to Jeff. "Fill these out and bring them with you tonight. I'll probably be in my office when you get in." "Yes, sir, will do." Todd stuck out his hand again, and Jeff shook it firmly, then turned and walked out the door smiling. He couldn't contain his excitement. He had found a job, just when things were at the worst they'd ever been for him. And it wasn't just a job either. It was an awesome job. Easy and high paying. Plus, it was at night and he would be by himself. Jeff couldn't believe his luck. This was a dream come true. Jeff was still smiling when he pulled up to the casino later that night. The clock on his dash read 9:45, exactly when he wanted to arrive. He stuck his flashlight in his back pocket and then grabbed his sack lunch, his travel mug filled with coffee, and his completed order forms. He was still smiling when he walked through the casino doors and to the back office where Todd sat waiting for him. "Here you go, sir," Jeff said pleasantly as he held the stack of papers out to Todd. Todd took them and set them neatly on his desk as he stood. "All right then, Mr. Jeff," Todd said warily. "Let's get you started." He walked over to the security office and went over some more basics, like how to operate the monitors, where the breaker box was in case of a power outage, things like that. Jeff nodded along contently, feeling nothing but peace and happiness. "Okay, Jeff, I'm off until morning. I'll see you at 6 a.m. "Oh, hey Todd," Jeff said as Todd turned to leave. Todd looked back at him. "Why 6? I mean, people really come to gamble that early?" Todd chuckled. "Oh, you'll see." He then turned and walked out the door, leaving Jeff to wonder about what type of person would go to a rundown old casino at 6 a.m. "Well, that's that, I guess," Jeff said as he took a seat at his new desk. He sat and watched the monitors while he drank his coffee and leafed through a Sears catalog he had found in the desk until 11 o'clock. He sighed and stood up from the desk to start his hourly rounds. He took a right from the back hallway and walked down past all the slot machines to the side door. He pulled on it to make sure it was locked, then walked over to the front entrance. Those doors were locked, as well as the door to the cashier's booth. Then he walked down past all the casino tables to the other side door, and checked that it was locked as well. With that, Jeff sauntered back to the security office and sat at the desk again. Wow, he thought, what an easy gig. He relaxed back into the old cloth chair and started looking through the Sears catalog again. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, he felt his eyelids begin to droop and his eyes burned with exhaustion. He wasn't used to staying awake overnight. He shook his head and then stood and stretched. "Wow, I sure could use some more coffee," Jeff said. He looked at the clock and saw it was only a few minutes before his midnight rounds anyways. He grabbed his coffee mug and headed towards the break room. In the break room, he found coffee and filters no problem and brewed a fresh pot. "I'll probably be back a few times tonight," Jeff thought to himself. He used the restroom while the coffee brewed and then came back and filled his travel mug. He found a drawer filled with packets of powdered creamer and sugar, and he helped himself. Then he turned and walked back towards the casino floor. As he walked past the bar, he suddenly froze. There was a man sitting at the bar. Jeff couldn't see him well in the dim lighting, but he did see the man was wearing a cowboy hat. "Todd?" he called out. "Is that you?" No answer. He reached with a trembling hand and found the light switch for the bar. He flicked it on and gasped. The man was certainly not Todd. Jeff wasn't sure that he was even a man at all. He was humanoid shaped, but his face had no skin on it. It was just exposed muscle. No nose, no lips, and no eyebrows. His eyes weren't normal either. They looked like small pits of blue fire burning within his skull. The stranger stared at Jeff from under the wide brim of his beat-up old cowboy hat. The man wore a linen shirt under a leather duster with faded blue jeans and cowboy boots. In front of him sat 2 shot glasses and an open bottle of Johnny Walker. "Why don't you take a seat over here?" the cowboy drawled with a thick country accent. Jeff stood frozen still, knees shaking. He cleared his throat. Excuse me, mister," Jeff stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here. The casino's closed." The cowboy looked back at Jeff and chuckled. "The casino is never closed to me, young man." He picked up the bottle and poured 2 shots. "Here." He slid 1 shot over to the spot next to him. "Sit," he growled. Jeff felt himself moving to sit next to the cowboy. "Drink," the cowboy commanded. Jeff picked up the shot glass and gulped the whiskey down. The cowboy drank his shot as well. "Now, it's time for us to play a game," the cowboy said, turning to grin at Jeff. It was the most terrifying smile Jeff had ever seen. Jeff licked his lips. What kind of game?" Jeff stuttered. "Come on," the cowboy said as he stood and began walking towards the table. "You ever play blackjack?" Jeff nodded. "Good." the cowboy drawled. "So I won't need to teach you." He pulled a deck of worn-out old playing cards from his pocket and gestured to a seat across the table from where he stood. Jeff fell into the chair, wondering why he couldn't seem to disobey the cowboy. "What I want," the cowboy started, "and what I'm offering is this. We play, and if you win, I give you money. A lot of money. But if you lose, I take your soul." Jeff tried to get up and walk away, but his body wouldn't obey. "You get all that?" the cowboy asked. Jeff felt himself nodding. The cowboy's eyes flickered, bright and unblinking. Jeff cleared his throat. Actually, sir, I do have some questions," Jeff managed to say. He was shaking all over. The cowboy simply raised an eyebrow. Well, what's your name, first off?" The cowboy stared. "I'm Jasper," he finally answered. Jeff nodded, feeling like he was making some headway in this crazy situation. "Okay, Mr. Jasper. Well, then how much money will I win if I win the match?" Jasper stared at him coldly for a moment before responding. 1,000 for the first match." 1,000? Jeff said. "You really think I'm going to wage my soul for $1,000? The alternative is your boss finds your cold, dead body in that chair in the morning," Jasper responded. Jeff almost fainted. He'd almost forgotten he was talking to what seemed like some sort of demon. "Well, all right then," Jeff whispered. "You ready to play, son?" Jeff swallowed. "Yeah, I'm good." Jasper gave a small grunt that might have been a laugh, or might have been pity. He dealt 2 cards face up to the player, ace and 4, then one up to himself, a 6 of spades. The whole card stayed hidden under his skinless fingers. Jeff stared at his hands like it might bite him. Hit? Jasper slid another card across the felt without comment. 5 of clubs. Total, 19. Jeff's shoulders relaxed a bit. "I'll stand." Jasper turned his whole card. King of hearts, 16. Jeff's eyes widened. Jasper drew one more card. Slow, deliberate. Queen of diamonds, 26. "Bust," Jasper said, voice like dry gravel. Jeff exhaled shakily. That's it?" Jeff stammered. "That's it," Jasper drawled. "For tonight." "For tonight? But wait!" Jeff tried to protest, but it was too late. Jasper was gone. He hadn't walked away or vanished in a puff of smoke. One second he was there, the next he wasn't. Jeff gasped and started sucking in as much air as his lungs could hold. He felt like an enormous weight had lifted off his chest. He suddenly realized there was a stack of crisp $100 bills on the table in front of him. "Holy guacamole," he breathed. He picked up the stack of bills and stared at it for a few moments. His head was a whirlwind as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. After a few minutes, he stood and headed to the security room. The monitors all looked completely normal. The casino was quiet. He felt his hands and realized he had stopped shaking. He went to take a sip of coffee and almost gagged. It was cold. He wasn't sure he wanted to brave walking past the bar again, but at the same time, he felt so exhausted at this point, he knew he wouldn't make it without more coffee. He went back to the break room and refilled his travel mug, and then walked back to the security room, all without incident. The rest of the night went peacefully, with Jeff drinking coffee and watching the monitors. He even did his normal rounds at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 a.m. with no problems. A few minutes before 6 a.m., Jeff heard the front door open, and a few moments later, Todd walked into the back hallway. "Morning, Jeff," Todd said cheerfully. "How'd your first night go?" Jeff hesitated before responding. "Oh, it went fine. Drank a ton of coffee, but I made it." "Atta boy," Todd chuckled. "See you tonight. Oh, and watch out for the herd as you leave." Jeff wondered what Todd meant by the herd, but as he was leaving, a crowd of elderly folk started shoving their way into the casino, desperate to get to the slots. Jeff stared slack-jawed at the rowdy crowd. At least now he knew what Todd meant by the herd. Jeff went home that morning, feeling both confused and scared. He had little to no understanding of what Jasper was, or if what he had been through was even real. The
farther he got from it, the more it seemed like some sort of exhausted fever dream. Nevertheless, he was truly exhausted. He fell asleep twice on the way home, but he made it. When he got to his bed, he fell onto it fully clothed and fell right to sleep. That night, Jeff felt fairly anxious as he drove to the casino. He wasn't sure what would happen, and he wasn't sure his heart could take another visit from the mysterious Jasper. However, he was sure that he needed the money. He was also sure that another $1,000 from Jasper would be a huge help to catching up on his bills. Everything went pretty normally for Jeff that night, but as it approached midnight, he made sure he was sitting and watching the monitors. Then, at exactly midnight, Jasper simply appeared at the bar. Once again, there was no warning or fanfare. One moment he wasn't there, and then he was. Jeff watched as he poured 2 shots again. The whiskey bottle had appeared from nowhere as well. Jeff leaned forward, breathing hard. Jasper turned slowly and looked right at the camera. "Let's go, Jeff," Jasper said calmly. "Might as well come get it over with." Jeff's heart dropped into his stomach. Slowly, he pushed himself up from the chair and walked on weak and wobbly legs towards the bar. As he approached, Jasper slid a shot glass down the bar. Jeff picked it up and hesitated a moment, then downed the shot in one gulp. Jasper stood without a word and walked over to the same blackjack table they had played at the night before. "Well," Jasper said as he pulled his deck of cards from his coat. "Get over here, boy." Jeff stumbled to the table and fell into his seat. "Now then," Jasper said as he started to deal. He slid 2 cards to Jeff face down, then dealt himself 1 up, 1 down. Jeff peeked. Ace of spades and 9 of hearts. 20 soft. Jasper's up card, the queen of diamonds. Jeff's heart slammed against his ribs. He looked at the ace, looked at the queen, and bit his lip, thinking quickly. "Stand," he whispered. Jasper raised an eyebrow. He stared at Jeff for a moment, then flipped his whole card. King of clubs. 20. Push if Jeff stood on 20, except Jeff had soft 20. Jasper studied the boy for a long moment, then tapped the table once with a skinless knuckle. "Dealer hits on soft 17 or better. House rules." He turned his own next card from the shoe. 8 of hearts. Jasper now showed queen, king, 8. Bust at 28. Jeff stared at the cards for a few moments. I won?" Jasper stared back, unblinking. "You're a lucky man, Jeff," Jasper said. Jeff blinked, and once again Jasper was gone. $1,000 lay on the table in front of him. He scooped up the money with trembling hands and hurried back to the security room. The rest of the night, he didn't bother with his rounds. He just sat and stared at the money and thought about his situation. He could quit. He could leave. He couldn't tell Todd about the cowboy, though. Todd would just think he was crazy. But this job was perfect in every other way. Great pay, easy gig. Aside from Jasper, it was downright peaceful. Plus, he now had $2,000 extra dollars. What would really happen if he lost? Jasper would take his soul? Was that even possible? Jeff wondered if a person could live without a soul. At 6, he walked out, nodding to Todd in passing and pushing past the herd on his way out, still lost in thought. He had trouble falling asleep that morning, thinking about what he should do. But that night, he got up and he went to work. At midnight, he played blackjack with Jasper, and he won another $1,000. The next night was the same, and the next after that. Before he knew it, he had worked at the Cowboy Casino for 3 weeks, and all of his bills were caught up. He realized he was happy. He was even looking forward to his nightly game with Jasper. Who knew he would be so good at blackjack? Then one night, something changed. He won the game as usual, but Jasper didn't disappear. Instead, he leaned forward slowly and growled, "Double or nothing." Jeff swallowed hard. He didn't like the sudden change. Then again, he had never lost before. "Well, alright then," Jeff agreed. Jasper grunted and dealt the cards. 2 cards to Jeff face down, 2 to himself, 1 up, 1 down. Jeff lifted the corners. 10 of clubs and 6 of hearts. 16. Jasper's up card and ace of spades. Jeff's stomach dropped like a stone through water. Ace up meant blackjack was in play, or at least a strong hand. He stared at his 16 like it had personally betrayed him. Hit or stand, son. Jeff licked dry lips. 16 against an ace was a death sentence in most books. But standing felt like surrender, and hitting felt like jumping off a cliff. Hit. Jasper slid the next card. Queen of spades. 16 became 26. Bust. Jeff's face went white. He didn't even curse. He just sat there, staring at the cards like they'd grown teeth. Jasper didn't smile. He simply flipped his whole card. 10 of diamonds. Ace and 10. Blackjack. Jeff slowly looked up at Jasper, feeling like he was going to pass out. Jasper smiled, his eyes of fire glowing bright blue. Your luck was always going to run out eventually, Jeff, Jasper said. You had to have known that. Before Jeff could answer, Jasper snapped his fingers. Jeff felt a massive pressure in his chest, and he gasped and fell from his chair. As he lay on the ground clutching his chest, he watched Jasper walk towards him. His vision blurred and faded to black as Jasper leaned over him. You belong to me now, Jeff, was the last thing he heard before everything went black. Jeff awoke with a start, still laying on the floor of the casino. Todd's angry face loomed over him. Hey, he's awake, Todd yelled to someone. Jeff looked around and saw 2 police officers walking towards him. What's going on? Jeff managed to ask through dry, numb lips. Looks like you might have had a medical emergency. Paramedics are en route, one of the officers answered. Even as he spoke, Jeff heard the rattle of a gurney as paramedics rushed in. They picked Jeff up and set him on the gurney. Before they wheeled him away, the officer who spoke to him clicked a pair of handcuffs to Jeff's wrists and to the gurney. Unfortunately, sir, you are also under arrest, the officer said somberly. Arrest for what? Jeff spluttered. Because I've got you on camera, drinking on the job and stealing cash from the cashier's booth, Todd replied angrily. You started on your first night here, and it took me this long to catch you. As soon as the cops got here, I ran to check the cameras to see how long you've been passed out. I saw everything, drinking and stealing every night, and now you're trying to die on my floor. You're fired, and I'm pressing charges. Jeff stared dumbfounded. He looked over at the blackjack table and saw the whiskey bottle and a stack of hundreds spread out on the table. He lay his head back down and closed his eyes, realizing there was no point arguing. The important thing was that he was alive. He did wonder, though, if Todd saw him stealing on the cameras, did that mean Jasper never existed? Was this entire thing one long psychotic break? Jeff had known a lady, a friend of his mom's, who had went crazy. She had claimed there were tiny people living in the walls of her house. Last he had heard, she was still living in a mental health clinic. He wondered if this would be his fate as well. At the hospital, the doctors told him he had had a minor heart attack. They would keep him for a few hours for observation, but that he would likely be fine. The police handcuffed him to the bed and told him they'd be back to collect him in a few hours. They gave the handcuff key to the nurse in charge of the floor in case he needed to use the bathroom. Jeff fell asleep listening to the hustle and bustle of the busy hospital. He awoke suddenly sometime later. The hospital was dark and completely silent. Jeff looked around the room, which was dimly lit by moonlight coming through the windows. There was no one outside his room, no one rushing through the halls, no one at the nurse's station. The hospital was completely still. Jeff's heart hammered in his chest, threatening to give out again. Suddenly, he heard the click of cowboy boots on tile. A slow, deliberate walk headed towards his room. It wasn't hard to guess who was coming for him. Jasper sauntered slowly into the dark room, a shadow with bright blue flames for eyes. So good to see you again, Jeff, Jasper drawled. Jeff began to sob. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? Jasper walked to the side of Jeff's bed and glared down at him. Your greed got you here, Jeff. You could have quit after the first night. I let you win so you'd have a chance, but you didn't take it. Came back. I gave you chance after chance. You just kept coming back, always wanting more. You never questioned where the money came from. You just stuck out your greedy hands and took it. Wait, please, Jeff began to beg. Tears streamed down his face. I told you, Jeff, you belong to me now. Jasper's face began to stretch, his jaw unhinging as his mouth grew wider, and even wider still. In his throat was a fiery abyss from which screams and wails of terror and torment could be heard. No, please, Jeff screamed. Please, God, I don't want to die, please. Jeff's cries fell on dead ears as he was sucked into Jasper's dread maw. The room went silent. Everything was dark and still. They never figured out what happened to Jeff. That afternoon, the nurse found an empty bed, handcuffed to no one. Nobody had seen him leave. They checked CC footage and no one had entered or left that room. He was just gone. A few miles from the hospital, a young man picked up a sheet of paper that had blown against his feet on the sidewalk. Help wanted. Start immediately. $20 an hour. Huh. Cowboy Casino, the man muttered.